Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Welcome to this webinar called Turning Your Sustainability Strategy into Business Value. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Karin Ekberg, and I'm the manager of the consulting company Leadership and Sustainability. Before I started my own company, I worked several years at Adidas in the role of Head of Environmental Services. So I was responsible for environment globally at Adidas. And before that, I have worked at many other companies managing sustainability at corporate level. Let's have a brief look at how to use the GoToWebinar features. You are all muted today in order to ensure that we have a good audio quality. But you are welcome to send us your questions throughout this webinar. If you wish to do so, then please use the question function. The presentation will be available for download after the webinar, and it will also be possible to watch the recording. You will receive an email with the details a few days after the webinar. And now, please let me know if you can hear me well. Just send me a comment in the question function, please. All right, seems to be working well. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's get started. Today we will talk about how to turn your sustainability strategy into business value. To start off, we will be exploring the need for a sustainability strategy and the function of a materiality assessment. We will then talk about the general process for developing a sustainability strategy. We will discuss the business case, the link between the business value and your sustainability strategy. And we will also spend some time on how to implement the strategy. We will talk about employee engagement and change management, and then we will have time for questions and discussions. So please feel free to send me your questions throughout this webinar. And at the end, I would also like to very briefly present our team and solutions to you. So let me first give you an overview. Here is a high-level illustration of the entire process to develop and implement a sustainability strategy. It is a very simple flow, but it's still important to keep in mind, and we will now talk about these phases one by one, beginning with exploring the need for a sustainability strategy, which also includes getting the commitment from top management to have a sustainability strategy. This phase is not to be underestimated. For some organizations, it takes years to get that commitment and support within the organization. But there is a wealth of convincing arguments for why sustainability should be handled as a strategic topic. And later we will also talk about the business case, which of course also can be used to convince management. BlackRock is trusted to manage more money than any other investment firm based on a capital of $6.3 trillion per end of 2017. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink made a much cited statement. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. It will ultimately lose the license to operate from key stakeholders. BlackRock can choose to sell the securities of a company if we are doubtful about its strategic direction or long-term growth. And looking at this question from the investor and the business perspective, a meta study based on 190 sources had the following results. 88% of reviewed sources find that companies with robust sustainability practices demonstrate better operational performance, ultimately translating into cash flows. 80% of the reviewed studies demonstrate that prudent sustainability practices have a positive influence on investment performance. After reporting environmentally positive events, stocks show an average alpha of 0.84%. Conversely, after negative events, stocks underperformed by minus 0.65%. And we have seen in practice a few examples also over the past few years where actually the loss in share value, in shareholder value, has been much more extreme than the values I mentioned here. A portfolio comprised of the 100 best companies to work for in America yielded an alpha of 2.3% above industry benchmarks over the period of 1984 to 2011. And now let's turn over to the consumer perspective. In a study by Boston Consulting Group, 75% of consumers in the 5 countries surveyed, you see them listed here, view sustainability as extremely or very important. So 42% extremely important, 33% very important, and only 18% neutral. And finally, we have quite a new voice, but also powerful. So Mrs. Greta Thunberg saying, I want you to act as if your house is on fire, because it is. So once you have a decision to develop a sustainability strategy, it is time to spend time on the materiality assessment, which is nothing else than an analysis of the present situation and of what is truly important for your organization when it comes to sustainability. So before you can develop the best sustainability strategy for your company, you do need to know your current situation. You need to know your sustainability impacts, risks, opportunities, costs, and potential benefits. You need to understand which sustainability aspects that are material for your business. Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, requires reporting efforts to center on materiality, impacts, risks, and opportunities, for example, financial, legal, and operational. And GRI also states that materiality is the basis for any meaningful sustainability strategy. It's the foundation, it's the platform to stand upon when developing a sustainability strategy. But GRI doesn't go much further with its guidance. So what we have done within leadership and sustainability is to build a methodology based on the basic requirement from GRI. And actually, this method is something that we have been building over the past 15 plus years and have used together with many companies. And the steps are: define your value chain, define your sustainability aspects that you want to include into your materiality assessment, and then we look at status, impacts, risks, and opportunities, and we evaluate them on a scale 1 to 3. For risks, we have a set of different risks we include, and for opportunities, we also have a few opportunities that we include into the assessment. And the value chain perspective, this gives us a good structure for the materiality assessment, the value chain. On this slide, you see a very detailed representation of the value chain, and it will of course look different for different companies. So it's always important to design your own value chain, and so that you as a company or organization is represented. And at the top of this slide, we see the overarching management processes. And below we have the actual business processes where the products and services are created, distributed, produced, sold, used, and even we have included end of life, although that may not be a business process within any organization, but it's relevant for the sustainability assessment. And then we have the support functions, for example, human resources, communication, finance, legal, IT. And once you have your value chain mapped, you can assess where you have your sustainability impacts, risks, and opportunities. But now let's look also at the supply chain level, because strategy is not only for brands. A supplier, a producer may also need a sustainability strategy. And to illustrate the value chain for the supply chain, we have made this picture. So you can see it gets quite complex quite fast. And we see with the involvement, for example, with the SAC's HIG facility environmental module, where we have been engaged over the past several years, that many suppliers are now being asked to develop their own strategies as well. And the method for the materialities assessment is the same, just with a slightly different perspective. So this method can be used at many different levels for brands and organizations, retailers, for suppliers, but also for brands, for example, analyzing their own supply chain. And so now we have the value chain perspective. The next step is to pick the sustainability aspects that you wish to or should use for your assessment. And there are, of course, many different lists you can use, and perhaps you choose the combinations of the ones you see here. If you haven't done it before, it is also one opportunity now to evaluate your own business strategy and the impact your business strategy may have on the different aspects. So on the left-hand side here, we see a few standards and initiatives that you may draw from. But you may also look to the topics that are trending in your industry or ask your stakeholders, or perhaps your stakeholders have already told you what they think are important for your business. And on the right-hand side, you can see a few examples of specific sustainability aspects. And this is, of course, a very, very short list and not at all exhaustive. So then we line up the value chain and all sustainability aspects in a matrix, and then we apply the detailed methodology. And here you see an anonymized example of what it could look like. These results are quite detailed, and therefore we also use a summarized view of the results, the so-called hotspot view. So let's look at the hotspot view. In the hotspot view, we have summarized, we have only risks and opportunities related to each value chain segment and sustainability aspect. So you see just a small extract here from a hotspot view. And you can see the color coding as well. Dark orange means significant impacts and risks. Light orange means some impacts and risks. Dark green means significant opportunities, and light green, some opportunities. And with this, you get a high-level overview of where your major impacts and risks, as well as major opportunities are. So it gives you basically the map of your entire value chain and all the different sustainability aspects that you wanted to include. So once you have this picture and understanding of your overall sustainability landscape, you can now move forward and develop the sustainability strategy. So let's go there. The steps to develop a strategy are quite straightforward, and you can see them listed here to the right. Here we will focus on the goal operation process, which is shown here in the illustration to the left. You begin by defining a few tentative goals. You check that they are aligned with each other. You draft programs that would help reach those tentative goals. You look at impacts and costs, the business case, and then you test the strategy as a whole, as a package, and the total business case with that. And then you adjust as necessary, perhaps taking several rounds in the circle. It's certainly an iterative process to find the perfect match for your sustainability strategy. And hopefully you can also align with your business strategy. You then need to go on and secure management buy-in and get a decision, and then you can finalize your strategy. And now we will dive a bit more deeper here into the strategy development. So what about goal setting? In the strategy work, in my view, the goal setting has a dominant place. And here is some advice from United Nations Global Compact. Focus on issues that are strategically important to your company. Start with where you believe the company has the most significant impact and where important business opportunities exist. This may mean going beyond operation boundaries. For example, you may want to set goals related to your supply chain or product use. Set stretch goals. This means setting some ambitious goals, even if you don't yet know how to achieve them. So be ambitious. This will stimulate innovation, investments, positive engagement, and ultimately performance. Leading companies are setting science-based targets defined by what the external world requires rather than by what seems easily achievable. And the science-based targets are mainly related to climate change, as we will see a bit later. And then connect your goals to business strategy. Link each sustainability goal to how it will support revenue generation, productivity, and risk management. Ensure support and ownership. You will need to secure and maintain broad organizational support for your company's sustainability goals. This includes internal and external support, both from the top down and bottom up. And also we would add, set long-term goals, not only year by year and also not only project-based. It is not a strategy to have 50 ongoing projects at the same time, because you actually, when you have that, you don't have a clear direction. You may be doing a lot of great things, but how are you measuring up your results, and in which direction are you really going? So this is what sustainability leaders do. So we already talked about the topics we might include into our work when we were conducting the materiality assessment, but now moving forward, we need to discuss which framework we wish to select for our sustainability strategy. And there is an overwhelming number of different frameworks and standards, and we have listed a few of them here. And I will now walk you through some of them. So you see here, there are several overarching frameworks, the value chain that we have already talked about, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we have Global Compact, we have OECD guidelines, we have ISO 26000, then we have several certifiable standards, maybe your own code of conduct, but also the different ISO and other standards that are certifiable. Then we have, at the level of the supply chain, a lot of different potential supply chain programs. We may want to develop a material strategy if we are a textile apparel brand. We may need to and want to develop a product strategy. And then, of course, we also have our long list of the specific topics or aspects. And here is a simple approach you can use, building directly from the materiality assessment and using the value chain framework. You basically fill in your different goals and projects into the matrix you had developed. And you can do that also in combination with all the following frameworks or a selection of them. So the Sustainable Development Goals, they are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, according to United Nations. And they address the global challenges we face, including those related to poverty, inequality, climate, environmental degradation, prosperity, and peace and justice. The goals interconnect, and in order to leave no one behind, it is important that we can achieve each goal. And then the target is 2030. So we have another 11 years to reach those SDG goals. But it's not so easy to build for a company or organization. It's not so easy to build a strategy directly from the UN goals, since they are very global. And but what you can do is you can easily connect the aspects you choose with the global goals and see if you can cover the ones that are also relevant for your business. We see many companies doing this. They do like a mapping basically of their sustainability strategy and link them up with the SDGs. So that is one opportunity for you as well. And then we have the ISO 26000, which is a non-certifiable standard. It's one of the ISO standards that you cannot certify to. But it covers social responsibility. It is now over 10 years old, and unfortunately, it is not used very widely. ISO 26000 covers a very comprehensive set of topics, the usual suspects, but also, for example, consumer issues and community involvement and organizational governance. And ISO 26000 can also be connected with the UN SDGs and with the OECD guidelines for multinational corporations. And there is guidelines also published about that. So this is an interesting standard. And it's also actually very helpful when looking at the topics, the sustainability aspect. You see the list is very comprehensive, and it has also quite a nice structure with a lot of subtopics into every main topic, so to say, and gives a good input into the sustainability strategy for anyone. Then we have GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, actually one of the really long-standing initiatives worldwide for sustainability. And they focus on sustainability reporting. And it's an independent international organization since 1997. And the vision is a thriving global community that lifts humanity and enhances the resources on which all life depends. The reporting standards, they are the first and also the most widely adopted global standards for sustainability reporting, and they also represent global best practices. And then we have the HIG suite of tools developed by SAC, Sustainable Apparel Coalition. They have the facility modules for environment and social and labor. There is the brand and retailer module and for environment and social labor, which is still in the pipeline. And then we have two product tools, the design and development module and the product module, of which the product module is also still in the pipeline. And the HIG index collects a lot of data and wishes to use this data also for benchmarking. SAC members, they can share the results, but also, for example, on the platform for the facility modules, the facilities, the suppliers, they can share their results with, for example, with their brands, with their buyers. And so this is a suite of actually of measurement tools. It's an index, but it can also be used as a guidance when developing the sustainability strategy. And then we have our also several long-standing and a few new ISO standards from the International Standardization Organization. These standards today, all the management system standards, they use the same structure of the plan, do, check, act cycle. And you can see the corresponding sections linked to the plan, do, check, act here on this slide. Now imagine you take any sustainability or quality aspect and you push it into the funnel here to the left and through the plan, do, check, act activities, which means you push it through the same approach. And to the left in the funnel, you see the 4 ISO management system standards that may be relevant for your business. ISO 9001 for quality, ISO 14001 for environment, 50001 for energy, and 45001 for health and safety. And the idea is really here that you can build an integrated management system. So previously, even with ISO standards, many organizations have built parallel systems. So separate system, one system for quality, one system for environment. But the idea of ISO is really to make it possible to build an integrated management system where all topics are basically managed within the same system. And the ISO standards, if you certify against them or not, they give a really good structure for any management system and also for any sustainability strategy. And now let's move over to the supply chain. And here it gets really colorful, although I have only selected a very small number of the initiatives that are available for supply chain management. There are lots of guidance and certification systems available for the supply chain. And many of them are quite overlapping, but sometimes they also have different focus. So we have, for example, the OECD due diligence guidance for responsible supply chains in the garment and footwear sector. We have the ICS, the Initiative for Compliance and Sustainability, a mainly French initiative. which has an audit tool for social and for audit. The audit, and for environmental. The environmental audit is a bit light, but they have those tools and are conducting audits. And then we have the Oeko-Tex landscape of certificates. We have the product certification, the Oeko-Tex standard 100, which is more or less an RSL testing, a testing of material and or final product on harmful substances. And then we have the production certification, the STEP, which covers social and environmental, but also quality aspects, for example, and health and safety for that. And the STEP covers one facility at a time, but taken together, there is the possibility to also have a made in green label on a garment, on a final product. And the made in green label means that at least 95% of the components going into that final product have been tested and are also produced under conditions that are okay from a sustainability perspective. So not only the garment manufacturer, but also upstream suppliers are included into this label. So you need to have the STEP certificate for all suppliers involved, delivering the 95%, and you need to have also the Oeko-Tex standard 100 certificate in order to get that made in green label. Then we have Bluesign. Bluesign has a system that covers also all environmental and health and safety aspects at the supplier, mostly the fabric mill or dye house where the focus of Bluesign's work is. The focus regarding topic is on positive chemistry, energy and water efficiency. So Bluesign makes available a list of chemicals that are graded or rated black, gray or blue. Black are prohibited substances, gray are substances or chemical formulations that shouldn't be used anymore, but they are still allowed, but one should substitute them. And the list of blue chemicals or chemical formulations are those chemicals that are really fully okay to use in the supply chain. So it's quite a complex approach that Bluesign has built here. And then finally, or not finally, but we also have the BPI, the business environmental, the BPI, which is an audit scheme for environment. And we have the sister scheme, that is the BSEI, which is an audit scheme for social aspects. And here you can have both a self-assessment and an audit on top of the self-assessment. Then we have Fairwear Foundation that is focusing on the textile sector and on social aspects. So environmental aspects are not included here. And there is a certification scheme where the audit results are also shared among members. And finally, we have the SAC and the HIG index, where the facility environmental module and the social and labor module for the facilities both provide self-assessment, and on top of that, the possibility to do a verification with an external verifier. And here, the results are also possible to share between members and from supply chain partners also to brands. So, and there are many other initiatives available also for supply chain management. And then another area, and that is also quite complex, and that's the materials strategy level. We see here, at least from the brand perspective, there is a huge number of options and only some of them are listed here. We see more and more a trend among brands and retailers to use more sustainable materials, be it better cotton, recycled polyester, or recycled nylon. During the past years, many brands and retailers have set significant quantified goals to achieve better materials. And most recently, a lot of focus has been on recycled materials as well. We see nearly on a weekly, monthly basis new commitments coming from brands and retailers and also from manufacturers. And over to product strategy. Again, lots of options, and this list here is certainly not exhaustive. Again, we have the SAC Sustainable Apparel Coalition with their HIG Index. One tool is the DDM, the Design and Development module, which is a very simple tool, mainly used by designers as a learning tool. And then in the pipeline, we have the product module, which is a product footprinting tool. And it is not yet to be published. It will be finished next year, 2020. And on the right-hand side, we have, for example, the cradle-to-cradle certification, a very stringent standard for product certification covering all the topics you can see in the picture here. So, and here are also a few other standards. And for example, the EPD, Environmental Product Declaration, is also a certification, a declaration that is being used more frequently now. So you see there is a wealth of different initiatives at every level. Wherever you look, there are so many different opportunities and so many possibilities that you have. When we now go into the specific topics, let's look at a few climate change initiatives. And again, I have made only a very short list. We have the CDP, formerly Carbon Disclosure Project, which has a very comprehensive reporting and scoring format where the results are also made publicly available. And this initiative is around 10 years by now, perhaps even a bit older. And then under the auspices of UN climate change, fashion stakeholders worked during 2018 to identify ways in which the broader textile, clothing and fashion industry can move towards a holistic commitment to climate action. And then they created the Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action, which contains the vision to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. And many brands and retailers have signed up to this charter, and some manufacturers as well. And the Fashion Industry Charter was launched at COP24 in Katowice, Poland in December 2018. And finally, already mentioned, we have the Initiative for Science-Based Targets, where the partner organizations are WWF, CDP, WRI, World Resources Institute, and also UN Global Compact. And the targets adopted by companies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are considered science-based if they are in line with what the latest climate science says it is necessary to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts even to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. While developing the strategy, it's important to at least try to develop the business case. The business case is important in order to know that the investments also make sense, but of course also in order to understand where there may be financial benefits. So a sustainability strategy should not only cost, should not only be a financial investment, it should also pay something back, and usually it does. So how many of you who are listening have developed the business case for your sustainability strategy? If you haven't done it, how often do you face problem when speaking to your managers, trying to convince them of starting a new project or perhaps even continuing an existing project? How many times have you been turned down with one of your projects because you couldn't find the right arguments for it? Well, we have done a lot of research on this topic, and out of the many options to structure the business case, we have selected this structure here. This structure you see here, we have defined the categories compliance, risk minimization, cost savings, integrated operations, brand and reputation enhancement, and innovation and market development. And as you can see, we have clustered these categories into 3 groups related to the actual financial impact. And so we have cost avoidance related to compliance and risk minimization. Let us say you implement a strong RSL program, a restricted substances list program, or you strike up a partnership related to chemicals management. If you have ever experienced a product recall, you will know that it can be quite costly, not to mention the loss of trust among your customers. Also, if you're communicating about your sustainability projects, and especially about sustainability in relation to your products, then be careful that you make sound and defendable environmental claims. Otherwise, you may need to pay a fine, or you may have cost in when you have to recall a product. So this is about avoiding costs. And then we have saving costs. It's a great way to make a profit out of your sustainability efforts. Some easy wins are, for example, energy savings or waste reductions. And another saving falling into integrated operations is actually related to consolidation, consolidating the supply chain, consolidating the different number of materials that you're using, even the colors that you are using. And finally, the last group here, perhaps the most interesting when it comes to expanding and developing the business, and that is to generate additional revenue, which is related to brand and reputation enhancement and innovation and market development. Creating a strong reputation and building a brand can be very rewarding financially. And another way to generate additional revenue is to increase your market share with existing products based on your good reputation, or also with more sustainable products. Okay, so let's move over to implementation. And now you have your strategy, and now you need to make sure it gets implemented. So get started and plan for the implementation. One commonly used implementation approach for business strategies is the McKinsey 7S module that you can see here to the left. All these elements need to fit the new strategy. Your old strategy, structure and systems will not do. If you continue to use them, then your sustainability strategy might fail. You need a strong leadership approach to this. Do you have your top management supporting you in showing leadership now? Are you yourself aware of the leadership qualities you need in order to succeed with your strategy implementation? And let's look at some of these elements at more depth. Building on the strategic goals and resources you have defined in the previous phase, you can now build your sustainability organization. You can use the same approach we used with the value chain. Identify your key players in your organization, and hopefully you have done that previously, and build out your organizational chart. Do you have a strategy team, sub-teams for your different areas? You also need a steering committee with representatives from the business functions. And then elaborate on your governance approach and potentially your management system approach. Identify the means to embed your strategy into your business functions and business processes. Help your business partners who are perhaps not sustainability experts, but experts in their respective business area, to build the bridge to them so that they can become your sustainability champions within the business. Get to know how they work and where the levers are for their respective sustainability goals, and help them define their programs and procedures, tools, and data management. When it comes to a successful implementation, there are two important success factors among many that I want to mention, speak about a bit more now, and that's employee engagement and change management. Employee engagement is a great way to drive sustainability within any organization, and there are many other benefits as well. Another perspective to employees is that potentially new positions and or new skills need to be developed in order to implement the strategy successfully, so to be aware of that. I have seen with the companies I have worked with and with my clients how important it is to engage employees. And there are so many ways to do this. Actually, many human resources managers see sustainability also as a retaining and hiring factor in their employee programs. But change is not often so easy to implement. Employees often have habits and processes built up over many years. But because people are the key to organizational change, business leaders must take appropriate steps to involve and engage employees in the sustainability vision and implementation process. And here are a few steps to consider when you lead the organization through a sustainable change and to further embed sustainability into the culture. develop a communication plan and create a supportive learning environment, create a coalition and model the behavior, and empower others to act. So regarding the developing a communication plan, you need to support employees to transition through the required change and to embed, for example, an environmental conscious thinking and acting into the day-to-day routine. Employees must understand the organizational vision and needs. A communication plan should be developed to ensure the vision and goals of the sustainability strategy are being shared across all employees, locations, and different management levels. Also, regular updates about the progress of the sustainability strategy is really important. Build on success stories, best practice examples, keep employees informed and motivated. And you will see there are many employees who are truly motivated by sustainability and want to support in any form. And however, increased awareness levels and desire to change will often be useless without the necessary knowledge of how to change to accomplish the goals of the sustainability strategy. You don't want just inspiration. You also want to direct that inspiration into reaching your goals and making sense of your work and really have a significant impact. And for example, existing and already established tools and communication channels should also be used to drive communication about sustainability and to support the organizational change. And you see here a few ideas. Create a sustainability knowledge and training center on your intranet, set up a regular newsletter, include sustainability topics into messages from top management. So whenever top management is speaking about the business development, etc., see if there is a possibility that they can also mention the most important sustainability achievements. And then something that is very popular among many employees is to organize events, for example, around Earth Day or World Water Day or other specific days to celebrate achievement and to raise awareness. And regarding creating a coalition and model the behavior, it's important to create a coalition of sustainability enthusiasts and make them the change agents from all levels of the organization. And also make sure that they really also model the expected behavior and make sure that your top management also become role models. And so with that, now I would like to open up for questions. Do you have any questions to me? Please feel free to send me your questions. Yes, one person here is asking if it's possible to see the PowerPoint presentation after the webinar, and of course it is. So we will send you an email within the next few days where you can then download the presentation and also listen to the recording. And then we have a question here. What are the top priorities for the fashion industry at the moment? Yes, I think it's really, first of all, to cover a lot, be very comprehensive. But some of the most trending topics that we see are circular economy, recycling of products. We also see a lot of activities happening when it comes to more sustainable materials. And then, of course, the supply chain work. So looking back just a few years, we had a lot of focus on social aspects in the supply chain management processes of most brands and retailers. And in the last few years, many have started to develop environmental programs for their supply chain as well. And I think that this area is certainly also an area that still needs to be built out. And so overall, the supply chain work is so important, and also to make sure that you support suppliers with capacity building, with trainings, and not only, for example, with audits or verifications. Yeah. So those were some of the top priorities. I'm sure you could probably name a few more as well. Chemicals management, of course, since several years now, chemicals management is also extremely important, and not only on the product side, but of course in the manufacturing. Which chemicals are you using in the manufacturing? And we see a lot of different initiatives there as well. Yes, and then we have one question here. Would like to understand how sustainable and purpose-driven business impact. How sustainable and purpose-driven business impact brand desirability and therefore commercial performance. And yes, this is of course a very comprehensive question, but if you go back and look at the business case example that I gave, we have a few companies also in the fashion apparel sector and in the outdoor sector that have built a really, really good and strong brand around sustainability. We even have a few examples of companies that have sustainability even nearly as their core mission, and they have built a really good reputation around that. And we can see that they actually also have been able to drive revenue with their more sustainable products, but also just based on their sustainability reputation. And we actually have, if you go to our website, to the blogs, we held last year, we held a webinar just focusing on the business case. So if you would like to see more and learn more about the business case, you can go there and download the presentation and listen to the recording as well. Yes, and then we have one question. What materials or substances have become no-nos the last year? Well, I will not be able to respond to that question so easily. But one thing we can say is really, for example, recycled. So we have several brands and retailers making commitments to recycled materials, and even some have made commitments to have 100% recycled materials in the products within a few years only. So they are not talking about 2050 or even 2030, but within a few years. And then a lot of questions here. Let me see. Yeah. What would you say the challenges with storytelling, communicating impact, initiatives, and commitment to sustainability are when communicating to external stakeholders? Yes, I think it's very, very challenging. When communicating to external stakeholders, I think you need to differentiate for which different groups you are speaking to, and then adapt your language and your stories based on the group, the stakeholder group. So of course, if you are speaking to investors, you need to speak another language than if you speak to consumers. But let's take the example of consumers. I think that many consumers, at least they say they would very much like to buy more sustainable products, as we saw in one of the examples I mentioned. But when they actually are going to buy a product, it's sometimes really, really difficult for them to select the best products from a sustainability perspective. So I think that is really one of the challenges that we have. We have so many different tools and so many different certifications. And I hope that we can harmonize and that we can streamline the communication around those different certifications. So that's one challenge, to really speak a simple enough language that convinces also the consumers. And as you know, with the problems that we have seen with the fake information about sustainability or wrong statements, commitments that are not being met, of course, has made the consumers also be very aware and beware that they are quite skeptical also about communication from brands. So that's a set of challenges I see. And yes, and then we have one question here. Any textile manufacturer whom approach to sustainability strategy should be looked at as a leading example. Well, I cannot mention anyone here, but there are several textile manufacturers who really have great sustainability programs and also are quite good at marketing their sustainability programs. But I will not name any one of them. I hope you accept that. All right, so thank you so much. We have a few more minutes if you have any more questions. Okay. All right. So in that case, I will have a look at the questions again and see if I missed one or two, and then I will send a response directly via email. But thank you so much for joining, and I would now like to just continue with some more information for you. And I would like to speak about leadership and sustainability. And here you can see an overview of our services. So we cover, of course, strategy work. We cover materials and products, supply chain strategies, but also hands-on work in the factories, as well as we conduct workshops on many different topics. And here you can see several members of our team. They are based in Germany, Italy, France, Turkey, India, and Bangladesh. In addition, we have new team members coming in Sri Lanka and China within the next few months. And so with that, before I say goodbye, I wish to let you know that there will be a survey with a few questions available after this webinar. I know you are conscious of time, but we would be so grateful for your input. So please take the 2 minutes to respond to the survey. And so thank you so much for joining us today, and goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.